Good morning. I'm Liz and I like to knit. And if you haven't been here before or you didn't infer from the title, this is a knitting podcast. I have a bunch of whips today. Unfortunately, no FOs. I was going to try to prank people and be like, oh yeah, I finished the sweater. But not quite. But that's okay because it'll be blocked for the next time. But let's go ahead and get into it. I'll start with what I'm wearing. I never like too long of intros on a podcast, so why would I do that for my own? This is the Telegram by Soprano Knits, who is also Becky Sorensen, and it was designed for La Bien-Aimée Mondim, which I've never knit with the La Bien-Aimée dyed version of it, but the Mondim by Retrosaria by Rosa Pomar. The Mondim La Bien-Aimée version is just a collaboration where they dye the yarn that Retrosaria makes, and that's probably the Retrosaria version is my favorite yarn, so I'm just too frugal to purchase the LBA dyed version, but that's what this sweater was designed for, and I quite like it. I get a lot of use out of it, and it's held up quite well. I did not knit it in the called for yarn. I knit it in West Yorkshire Spinners Signature 4-ply, and that worked perfectly fine. I didn't have to do any changes in gauge needle-wise than I otherwise would have. I have a pretty tight gauge on my own, so I did go up in needle size from what the pattern called for, but nothing out of the ordinary with that yarn change. And this yarn is actually held up really well too. This is, oh god, a couple years old at this point, I think. Yeah, because I knit it when I was in my old apartment, so 2021 probably, maybe 2020. And the reason it's called Telegram is it has this kind of an SOS sort of pattern. I'm getting very close to the mic, so I apologize if the sound went up. That carries all the way down the sleeve and all the way down the body. And there is one sort of double crossover that was a pain in the ass to do. Sorry, swear word. But it was very worth it. I could see myself knitting this again without even bothering with that cable pattern and just enjoying this textured rib for the rest of it. It was knit top down, one piece, no seaming or anything. The button band you do have to pick up afterwards, but I don't remember it being super traumatic. It's not double knit, so it doesn't take that long. The picking up of the stitches is really the only fiddly part, and it's not you have to get all the way around to realize it's going to be too tight, since you're knitting just back and forth across it rather than this way. So you can just, I think I did in fact have to rip out and restart the button band because I hadn't picked up enough stitches along this edge initially, and it was totally fine, non-traumatic at all. Barely remembered it. But yeah, there's not very many pills on this. I could have done a better job with the armpits. I'm noticing there are a couple holes, and that was just me. Now I pick up extra stitches. I can't remember which podcast taught me that. Maybe Kim and Jonna. But just picking up a couple extra stitches when you go to cast on your sleeve and then just decrease them out in the first round tends to help kind of fill in that weird armpit space. But I think a lot of people do that, so that's probably not that helpful of a tip. But anyway, this did at one point have buttons. It does not anymore. It does have button holes, but I put some really pretty brass metal buttons on this that came off. I don't wash it because it's not super washed, so I don't machine wash it, but I think I did put it in my old dryer just to spin the water out of it before laying flat to dry, and all of the buttons came off in that process because I didn't fix them well enough. Now I usually use one strand of the yarn that I used for the project as well as a strand of just normal sewing thread, and that tends to keep my buttons on a little bit better. But those ones they're a little heavy for the project anyway. I just really liked them aesthetically. But the truth of the matter is, this is a little snug. If you look at the pattern photos, and hopefully I put one up already, it's probably designed with more positive ease. I knit a size 2, and it gets plenty of wear. I do like the way this fits. but I've also gotten a little bit bigger since I made it. So I wouldn't probably want to wear it closed anyway. So yeah, it's a lot for not very much pattern. Oh, I've also knit socks with this yarn. I'm actually wearing some of them today. That was unplanned. West Yorkshire Spinners makes a lot of fun like holiday colorways and like self-stripings, and they hold up really well too, but these are one of the Christmas colorways. I actually have a pair of like combo scrappy socks with this yarn and those that patterning together, so 10 out of 10. Great yarn, affordable, not super soft. Couldn't knit that for my husband, but I would wear a million sweaters in it and no problemo. This is also the second orange cardigan that I've shown on this podcast. You may remember, I don't have a ton of cardigans, and with two of them being like the same kind of burnt orange color is the good thing is one is way oversized and this one is more fitted, so they have very different niches in my wardrobe, but I think I need to diversify my cardigan colors. Maybe just a nice neutral next time I make one. We'll see. Ooh. Oh, the other thing that I wanted to mention about this combination is that this sweater pattern was more expensive than I remembered. It's a very well written pattern. It's several pages. It is currently at $16.87 USD just for the pattern on Ravelry. And it's not that I don't think it's worth that, but it is more expensive than a lot of other patterns for similar garments on Ravelry, so take that with a grain of salt. It is graded for a 33-inch bust up to a 69-inch bust, which is great, and I know that the designers put a lot of work into achieving that. The other thing is if you are knitting a size 8 through 10, which is like the 3 largest sizes, she did have some trouble getting test knitters for those sizes, so she's offering those that pattern free to people who would be knitting that size in exchange for kind of doing like a retrospective test, or at least that's what the Ravelry page for the pattern still says. So if you're interested in knitting a larger one of these, or even, I mean, you don't have to be those bust sizes, but if you want more positive ease, I guess, then that's a more frugal way, not cheap, frugal way to knit a pattern that's kind of more expensive than I remembered it being. All right, let's move on to whips since I don't have any FOs this week. Y'all knew this one was coming. This is my Canic Genser by Heidi and Anna Pickles, and I wish I could say it was done. I've knit both of the sleeves since last time. One of these I knit 1.5 times, so that's a bit of where that knitting went. I have finished the main part of the body. As you can see, I finished like the front split hem, which is trying to roll. And then I am partway through the back split hem. So like it's almost a full sweater. I can wear this and not be exposing anything, but it's not finished. And I think I'm gonna want to try to block it a little bit as well for just for this like hem, because you can see it is trying to roll out just a little bit. This is a little over an inch of ribbing, and I think that's going to be enough, but it's also trying to like roll in on this edge too, and I like how this detail looks, so I want that to lay flat. So I'm going to finish this and block it before next time, and hopefully the blocking will not prompt me to not rip back, because this is a tubular bind off and it's got alpaca held with it, so I'm gonna need to just cut this off. So hopefully I don't have to do that, and knit more ribbing so that it wants to hang without flipping itself up. Straight stockinette will try to flip itself up, and so if you put a longer ribbing on here, it'll kind of be able to fight that urge. You can see this is puckering in where it is. But for those of you who are new here, let me talk a little bit more about what this pattern is. This is the Canic Genser, like I said, by Heidi and Anna Pickles. It is not... we'll say this is inspired by that pattern because I have cut and chopped it quite a bit. The things that I have kept from this pattern is it is basically the same style. It's a raglan, it has a turtleneck, it has long cuffs, it has a split hem. And this color is actually pretty close to the one like in the pattern photos. Not the same yarn at all. The normal one is knit in Pickles Tweedy, which might be extant. They might not sell it anymore. Some of their patterns you have to buy with the kit from their website. Some of them you don't. I don't think that that's necessarily just like if the yarn exists, you have to buy it in the kit, because I think it's just a period of time where they'll only sell it with the kit before they release the pattern on its own. So needless to say, I don't like knitting in chunky yarn, so I wasn't probably going to make it with the original yarn anyway, but I like the pattern itself. The things that I have modified is that this is a pattern that is normally writ bottom up and pieced and seamed together, and I modified it to be just a top down in the round raglan because it's a raglan, not too hard to do, and I am using yarn that I wasn't sure if it was going to be enough, and so I wanted to be able to finish a sweater and then add like tunic-y length on to the extent that my yarn quantities allowed. And I'm actually in very good condition here. Sorry for the sonic experience of this bag crinkling, but I had 4 skeins of the, I should tell you what it's knit in, of the Blackberry Woolen Mill Sport in dark bronze, and this is half a skein left. And I have a pretty sizable ball that's attached right now, so I don't even think I'll need to break into that last 500 or 50 grams. And then I have brushed alpaca silk in curry, and I have 2 more balls of that after this one. And I again just basically have the back, and I think I want to knit it a little longer than I did the front so that I can wear this with leggings and be culturally appropriate for the 30-year-old woman that I am. So I also have part of a ball of the brushed alpaca silk that my cat destroyed. So if I find it in me to untangle that nightmare, then I'll have extras. Hooray. But I'm knitting this in a US 7 or 4.5 millimeter needle. I knit it top down so that I could kind of play with my yarn quantities. I changed all the numbers because, again, not the same gauge. I talked a little bit about that in my last video, so I'm not going to go too far into that again. And then the split hem technically has the same length ribbing as the sleeves in the pattern. So this is 10 centimeters of ribbing, and the pattern photos for the actual garment have like maybe this much, and then they go straight into a long rib. And so I both extended the length of the split hem, and I've also decreased the percentage of that ribbing at the end. So we'll see how that goes. For the sleeves, all I really did was knit straight until I got to about the part of my arm where my bicep ends, and then I did some very gentle decreases. I think only like 12 stitches overall, and then I just knit straight until I was about 10 centimeters from where I wanted it to land, which for me, I kind of wanted it like not all the way to my thumb bone, but I wanted it to go, I didn't want it bracelet length, you know? So hopefully that'll be cozy. If it grows a little bit when I block it, I'm okay with that. I kind of try to leave it at that. My swatch did not grow very much when I washed it, so I don't foresee this changing too much unless I'm really like pulling it, because I don't do that to swatches. I just kind of want to know where the fabric wants to be, rather than trying to like block it, because I don't have the motivation or energy to do that when I wash my garments usually. And so that gives me a more accurate perspective. So yeah, this should hopefully be done and blocked next time you see me. I was a little bit disappointed that I didn't finish it before today because I live in Kansas City. Kansas City, Missouri has a football team called the Chiefs, and in American football, the Super Bowl is this weekend, which is kind of like the big culminating game. And my town's team is in it, and their colors are red and gold. And so I was like, oh, I could totally wear this to like a Super Bowl party, and I could paint my nails red and wear red lipstick, and that's not gonna happen. It's definitely not cold enough for this sweater anyway, so I would be suffering. So it's just the universe being like, you don't want to be in a loud room with yelling people and a thick sweater that you're uncomfortable in. So thank you, universe. I will listen to you, and I will finish this for next winter and not for tomorrow. Moving on to my next whip. So I'm not even going to show my Birch pullover by Andrea Mowry because I think I've only put like a couple of rounds on it since last time. But I have actually put about an inch more on my Eyelet Cowl by Purl Soho. This is knit in the color Hella, which is the Felix base by Aimee. And I didn't think this was going to get any more love, but I found myself in a position where I was like, oh, I'm going to be stuck in a car dealership for like who knows how long, and I don't have a project that's small enough to bring with me. So I took this that day, and then that prompted my next cast on. I don't like to have multiple sweaters on the go at the same time. In fact, this podcast is making me change a little bit of how I knit. I don't know if it's just coincidence that like this is when I started filming my progress and works and wanting to have like things to share with people in a like every 2 weeks rather than just whenever they're finished, or if it's because I've recently gotten very excited about a bunch of very thin yarn weight patterns. The Birch is one of them. That is one of them. And this next one is also one of them, but I think it'll be done in time for a nice like spring, early summer cardigan to have, which I don't really have in my wardrobe right now, so I'm very excited about. And that is the Elton by Locatelli. There is an Elton pullover, but the original one and the one that I'm making is the cardigan version. She also just released a new pattern that is very similar to this, and I apologize for the crinkling. This is just a reusable grocery bag that I think I got from like some bookstore. I don't usually use project bags very much, but recently I've been kind of like tossing my stuff into my backpack where like I also have shoes to work out with at the end of my workday, and I don't want my yarn to smell like shoes, so they live in there when it goes in the backpack. But Heidi also just released a new pattern that's very similar to this one, that is knit in slightly different yarn weights, and that one is called the Milton, and it is a longer cardigan. So those are exciting as well. But this one is the Elton. And as you can see, it's striped in a fingering weight and a silk mohair, which I'm thrilled about. And the nature of this pattern is why I picked it actually in the first place. I've had this yarn in my stash for a while. This is the Lana Grossa, I'm gonna mess this up because it's like 4 weird words, Silk Hair Haze Degradé. And I have, it kind of varies in color, which is where I think that degrade situation comes from. I have 3 balls of this. It is 50 grams of mohair, which previously all of the mohair that I've really bought has only come in 25-gram balls. So it's a lot of mohair. And I originally bought to use as just like a plain old stockinette pullover held with some light tan fingering weight yarn. And for 2 reasons I didn't do that. One, when I swatched, the color change in this was a lot more significant than I thought, and I don't enjoy pooling in a sweater, and especially if I'm already holding 2 balls to like hold something double. I am not about to do helical knitting or something to try to prevent pooling. So I didn't do it for that reason. But that did mean that I was like, well, I don't really want to use this in a way that it can pool noticeably, and I have a lot of it. So I'm still not going to use all of it up on this sweater, but maybe I can hold it with socks or something. This is not very far along. You can see, let me just talk through it, like, that's an insane thing to do. It's very thin, it's very lightweight, and because it's stripes, I don't think any pooling is going to be noticeable or a problem at all. And also that's kind of more the see-through part. You can see my thumb there. So I really, pooling is not going to be an issue for this yarn with this sweater. So that's great. The other yarn I'm using is not one that I would normally buy because this is a hand-dyed yarn. And I'm usually more of a like commercial dye person. One, because again, I don't like doing helical knitting. I don't like having to like deal with that with my skeins, but again, it's striped. I'm not really gonna have to worry about that so much. But this is the Kim Dyes Yarn Sourdough Sock. And this is their June 2023 color for their local yarn store club. And so my yarn store just happened to have some of these when I came in with this ball and was like, I need something that goes kind of together in a fingering weight. And this is what I picked out. And it's really pretty. It has some speckles of blue and orange, but for the most part, it's kind of just a taupe, which I think will be very accessible for wearing it over other things in my wardrobe. It's also quite soft. This is a 80/20 superwash sock base, and the colorway is technically called Tan Tartan. I don't know if you'll be able to find this. It was kind of a weird situation that I was, but if you do, or if you have it, like, it's really pretty. I really like it. I don't think you can see the flex well enough. You can see it a little bit, but very pretty, very soft. This cardigan pattern, you pick up the back neck, do a little bit of short row shaping, and then you knit the back down. And then once I finish basically the 13-inch armhole, I will be grabbing the stitches from the top of each shoulder, knitting down the front, and then you knit back and forth, because again, it's a cardigan. And then you pick up for the sleeves and knit down, and then you pick up the button band, which I'm not terribly worried about. I am a little bit worried, at least on one side here, because you're carrying, that's the wrong side, you're carrying each of these colors up the side, and that tends to kind of distort the stitches a little bit. So I think it'll be harder to pick up stitches from that shoulder edge than it would be if I was knitting in just plain stockinette, not striping. So we'll see how that goes. I will be completely honest with you about how competent I am in that process. What else? I am knitting this not with the needles to pattern. I've not knit a Hohi Locatelli pattern before. I was drawn to the like aspects of this pattern that would allow me to use the yarn that I have. I do like Hohi's patterns and how they look, but I also feel like I don't want to pick patterns that you've seen 40 billion times on a podcast to show on a podcast unless I have a really, really good reason to do so. And Hohi's a very popular designer, so a lot of her stuff I see and I'm like, okay, I know what it'd be like to knit that, and then I'm not as motivated to have one. That feels bad. It feels a little sociopathic, but that's kind of the reason that I haven't knit one of her patterns before, and I think she is a much looser knitter than I am, because I did not go up just one needle size, I went up 2, and I still am not quite getting gauge. Like, I think I'm getting like 1.5 stitches more per 4 inches than she does, and I'm knitting this on a US 6 or 4mm needle for a pattern that is written for a US 4. So that is fine though, because she recommends 16 inches of positive ease for this sweater. It's very loose, which you'll have seen from the pattern photos that I put up. And then the sleeves are a little bit more tight, but it's very much a very loose drop shoulder. And then the sleeves are cropped and fitted. So a little bit like her boxy pattern it looks, or some of like the Weekender by Andrea Mowry, some of those boxy but fitted sleeves sort of patterns. That's what this looks like. and she recommends 16 inches of positive ease, which for me exactly is the size medium or the size 3. And I don't think I want that much positive ease. I definitely want it to come over the shoulder, but I tend to find that like if I like the way it fits on my bust, I don't like as much positive ease as patterns usually call for. So the fact that I'm not quite at gauge, the fact that it's probably going to turn out a little bit smaller than the pattern schema, I think is going to be perfect. So I'll keep you up on that. Right now it's small enough to be my take around to work and to wait in car dealerships if need be pattern. So I think for a while at least. Wow, hold on. Just going through puberty again, I guess. I think this will go pretty quickly for a while. I don't know what once I join the front and back and I'm just knitting back and forth, it'll be a larger project. Not huge, not as like wieldy as the Canic Genser. So hopefully it'll go fast because I can just take it with me everywhere. So I'll keep you posted on that. That is all my whips right now. But I do have some acquisitions / future plans that I would like to talk about. If that's not your cup of tea, I'll see you in 2 weeks or sooner. Spoiler alert. But thank you for coming by. Moving on to those things for those that are interested. So my last podcast, I talked about some yarn that I had ordered that was stuck in customs, and it has arrived. And I'm very excited about it. I bought this from Lovecrafts, and I don't know if it's like one of their exclusive yarns, but this is the Valley Yarns Northampton, and this is 100% wool. Oh, it's by Webs. I bought it from Lovecrafts. I should have bought it from Webs, and I wouldn't have had to deal with customs. Trying to make that minimum order requirement, though, and this was on a pretty decent sale. So this is a 100-gram ball. It is worsted weight, and it is the Lake Heather colorway. And I had mentioned this looks very different on different sites when you look for it, but I'm very pleased with the color. The only trouble with that is this garment that I finished right before Christmas is in a DK weight. These are pretty similar yarns, and I didn't even register that I was purchasing basically the exact same thing that I just knit a garment in. Oh well. This is the Drops Lima, which I really like, and it's very soft. It has alpaca content. This is just wool, so it's not like the exact same, but it's close enough that I probably should have realized. That being said, I'm very excited to have this yarn. I had talked about some sweater patterns that I wanted to knit with it in the last podcast, and not very many people weighed in. I think I know which one I want, but because I'm not going to cast this on right away, this will probably be late summer, early fall for me. I'm going to leave it up in the air still, because who knows, I might change my mind again. But I've got a sweater quantity of this. It's extremely soft. My husband is sensitive to wool, and he would handle this just fine in a sweater. So especially if I can get it on this same sale again, I might make him a sweater in this next year or the year after that. I have to next year. Next winter will be our 7-year wedding anniversary, and y'all probably know this already being knitters, but 7-year anniversary is the wool anniversary, so he's definitely getting a sweater next year. And it might be in this. The other thing that I got in that I'm going to share with you, because it is along a similar theme, is this Cascade Yarns Refine, which is, last time I said it had cotton content, I lied. It has 5% viscose, but it's 75% superwash merino and 20% nylon and 100% recycled. So I am excited about that. Somebody on like a Ravelry yarn review for this said it's very rough, and I don't find that. It's not as soft as that those Valley yarn. Oh, my cat just appeared. You want to say hi? Come here. This is Willow. She's terrified of humans, but basically any humans other than my husband and I. Like I was saying, I don't find this too rough. I think maybe it might vary per colorway. So your miles may vary on that, but I find it quite soft. The thing that I have an issue with this yarn is, once again, this is the fingering weight Mondim that I just knit those mitts out of. So what business do I have buying yarn that I literally am already working with? It's not like I'm not using those yarns. They're not still in my stash. I've used half this ball. I have the opportunity to work with it still. But why do I have to diversify my yarn purchases, is what I'm saying. I'm making very silly decisions. I do have other yarn that came with that, but I think I'm going to talk about those in a non-podcast video. I've been thinking about a lot of things that I'm like, oh, I should talk about that next week when I have my next podcast. And it's kind of developing into full video ideas so that I don't just go on a 30-minute tangent at the end of one of these. And so I think I'm going to save that for a video kind of inspired by Marlene Knits, I think that's her name. But she just did a video on her sweater quantities in stash and what she wants to do with them. And I think I'm going to put out a video on that next week, which would be my podcast off week, because I'm enjoying making videos and I don't knit fast enough as a single person podcast to have interesting videos every week. But there's definitely more that I would like to film and talk about. So I've got a list of stuff to discuss. I will share one more purchase that I made. And this is a little bit more, I already said where I live, so I'm not doxing myself by sharing this. But there's the most wonderful crafting thrift store in my area. It's called Scraps KC. If you are nearby the Kansas City area, or if you just really like a crafting thrift store, this one's thebomb.com. If you're ever just like making a Kansas City day trip, it's right around the corner from like the Boulevard Brewery tap room as well. So highly suggest going and having some beer and then shopping for discount yarn. They have so much more than yarn though. Oh, I could talk for hours about this place. It is one of those like you go and the store tells you what you need sort of things. But I can also go and be like, I need yarn for a baby blanket. I need yarn for X, Y, and Z. And if you're not like super tied to like I need a hand dyed something for this, you can find that, but it's hit or miss for that. This though is I've done a little bit of research because all I had to go off of is there was a sticker on the inside of this cone that just said Carasoft. And some Googling easily brought that up. I think that this is the Carasoft by Heirloom Yarns, which is discontinued. It is acrylic sport weight 2-ply. And these cones are in full supposed to be just shy of 500 grams. I don't buy acrylic a lot for a number of reasons. The most significant one being it's not a sustainable fiber. It's not going to break down. And so I feel a little bit bad purchasing things from like a Joann's or something that the manufacturer is going to now make more plastic yarn to put on that shelf because I bought it. But for a discontinued yarn from a thrift store, no one's trying to replace this because I bought more of it. So, guilt-free, baby. I also usually don't buy acrylic yarn because it doesn't really drape very well. It's the same reason I don't enjoy chunky yarn, is because I like to have a little bit of drape in my fabrics. And I think it being a sport weight, and I do plan to knit this at a looser gauge, I think that will take care of that problem as well. So I don't know what I'm going to make with this, but it's just the brightest frickin' red I've ever seen, and it's very exciting. It's coming across, it looks like it's blowing out a little bit, but not as much as you would think. Like, it really is just very bright. So I think this might be a Christmas sweater for next year, or I'm not going to knit a baby blanket out of this unless the parents are really intense with their nursery decisions. I don't know, it'd make a good blanket for the couch because the cats can just tear it up and it's not a problem. I'm excited for it. That's that. If you ever want to get absolutely trashed or to make sure that you're very, very hydrated, play a drinking game with your beverage of choice and just drink every time I say All right, that is all the knitting, all of the acquisitions that I want to share today. Thank you for watching till this point. I do plan to have a video to release next week. It won't be a traditional podcast, like I said, but hopefully this will be a more regular thing to accompany your weekend knitting. And if you have any thoughts on what I should make, if you also keep buying the same yarn, not exactly, but like without even thinking about it, let me know, because I'm kind of embarrassed about that. And I hope you're making something that you're enjoying. I hope you have a very cute cat to cuddle with. And either way, stay warm, cool, and have a good couple weeks. See ya.